What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 164 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends. And I'd really like to ask you a favor. Try to share this with 2 friends in particular, get them to listen to the episode, and then sit down over coffee or tea and chat with them about it, okay? And if you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. When we come back, we'll get into this episode entitled Fentanyl, Why Are They Putting It in My Drug of Choice? Welcome back to episode 164 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast entitled Fentanyl, Why Are They Putting It in My Drug of Choice? This episode is in response to listeners who have heard about some of the new drugs on the streets of Philadelphia. They know that I worked in outreach in the Kensington area of Philadelphia for years, and they know that Kensington has long been world known as one of the hot spots, if not the largest hot spot for heroin that anybody can go to. And it's often been called the Walmart of drug scene. So today what I'm going to do is look at fentanyl as why is this showing up in this area and around the world now. And next week's episode, we'll look at xylazine. And the question we're asking is, why are they being mixed into other drugs? And what do they do? Like, why are they showing up in my drug of choice? Well, simply it comes down to economics. For years, the food industry has capitalized on food additives to increase profits. The profits come because the additives are artificial, synthetic, not too costly, and not nearly as expensive as the natural product, and not nearly as bulky to handle. And so therefore, if you mix some cheap synthetic artificial food additives into the food we buy, you increase your profit as a food industry. The same approach to increase profits has sprung up in recent years in the street drug business. The first big arrival in the heroin area of Kensington was fentanyl. And fentanyl was developed back around 1959-1960 as an intravenous anesthetic for operations. It's a synthetic opioid that is 50 times stronger than heroin and was 100 times stronger than the morphine that was available back in 1960 for surgeons. And bulk dealers now who are dealing in illicit street drugs can buy pharmaceutical-grade fentanyl cheaply online. Fentanyl is cheap enough to cut the price of heroin in half. So you sticking with this? Up to 50 times more potent than the heroin at half the price. But with this increased potency has come a significant increase in overdose deaths. The data from CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, found that in 2022, a record 110,000 people died in the U.S. of overdose. That's 110,000. This means that every 10 days in the United States, more people died of overdose in 2022 than died in the 9/11 attacks. You got that? Every 10 days. It's like having the 9/11 attacks happen 3 times a month. So the question is, why are dealers selling drugs with fentanyl if so many people are dying of overdose? And in February of 2023, both ABC and CNN looked at the opioid situation in the U.S. CNN's article came out in February 2nd, and it was by Amanda Seeley and Nadia Quonang, and it was entitled Tracking the Opioid Crisis Inside the DEA's Secret Lab. Some of the interesting statistics that came out of their study was, and I quote, "Fentanyl is the deadliest drug in the United States, and it's often found in combination with other illicit drugs, including cocaine and heroin. But increasingly, fentanyl is showing up in illicit pills disguised as common prescription drugs like oxycodone, hydrocodone, even Adderall. Users buying drugs on the street that look like prescription pills may end up with a high, potent, potentially deadly drug they never intended to take." And they go on to say that over 99% of what they've seen in the DEA are fake, and that the pills that the agency is seizing 99% of the time are containing fentanyl. So this is not just a little bit of a couple of local street dealers cutting drugs. This is happening at the major distribution level. ABC's article came out on February 1st, 2023, and it was by Victor Ordonez and Sony Saltzman. And in their report it said, and I quote, "Done correctly, lacing illicit drugs with fentanyl often creates a return stream of customers because fentanyl is considered highly addictive. This is why fentanyl is often found in drugs like cocaine, counterfeit Xanax, counterfeit Adderall, or other drugs not classified as opioids." And as they spoke to the people as they researched it, here's some of the quotes they got back. "Fentanyl is good for business if you layer addiction into it. Fentanyl is a cheap alternative to other opioids. Because a smaller dose has a similar effect relative to other opioids, it is also easier to smuggle." You see the reasoning behind this showing up over the past 10 years. We need to remember that for heroin addicts, one bag is too many and 1,000 bags is not enough. So dealers have the opportunity to create new opioid addicts through the use of lacing various drugs with small amounts of fentanyl. And once addicted to the fentanyl, to the opioid, the chase is on to try to match that first high. And the New York Times reported in May of 2022 by Jan Hoffman that fentanyl-tainted pills are now being bought on social media by youths in their homes, and that this is causing an increase in drug deaths of teenagers and young adults in their own homes. They're turning to Snapchat, TikTok, and other social media apps to find Percocet, Xanax, or other pills, which are then delivered to their house, and the vast majority are laced with deadly doses of fentanyl, police say. Can you get a feel for this crisis and why the opioid crisis has been in the news for so many years now, and how it really ties into fentanyl? Because once fentanyl hit the streets, the overdose rate in the U.S. began to spike and climb every year. It had been level for maybe 5 or 10 years before fentanyl arrived. And it was level at 30 or 40,000 overdoses a year. And now has reached 110,000. I believe we all need to be aware of the fentanyl situation in our area and how to be prepared to help reduce the number of overdose deaths. And in response to the rising overdose death around the world, countries have begun a variety of services, including fentanyl test strips. Have you heard of those? They're actually available And the plan is that users who do not want fentanyl in their drug of choice could actually test the drug before they ingest it. Have you heard of naloxone or Narcan kits? These have been around for a while and can almost instantly reverse overdoses and save lives. And some governments are now making them available through vending machines or free at pharmacies. Some countries and some cities for several years now have had safe injection sites, supervised locations where addicts could go to in the areas where they're already staying and either be injected while they have a friend there or while a nurse is present. But in almost all the sites, there's counseling available, there's medical aid available, and there's referrals into rehabs available. One of the latest things to show up is some countries like Canada have begun to try out vending machines to purchase safe doses of the opioid hydromorphone. So there's quite a few things out there. And in response to the listeners who asked for this episode, I agree. We can't be ignorant of the effects of fentanyl. So please search online or contact me if you need more information on any of these life-saving options. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you would like to join an online group or get one-on-one counseling, please message me on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfromatod@gmail.com or go to my website www.fromatod.org and click on the contact page. You can keep in touch with what we're doing in From A to D by following me on Instagram at David from A to D. For our Spotify listeners, you can leave your comments by clicking on the link they provide on the platform. I hope you could hear my passion in this topic of illicit drugs being tainted, being laced with fentanyl just for profit. And I hope you tune in Monday for our next episode on xylazine. And as always, stay safe and stay strong.